My presentation for today is, I'm sure that information is all correct. I think it is. Yeah. Is called Tinnitus Channelled or Tinnitus Texts, um, and it's the name of the project that I've been developing and working on throughout the last year or so, but it still feels very much in its early stage. Due to the fact that I'm also working on other stuff. So, but apologies in advance that I'm going to have to read because I've got quite a bit to get through. But hopefully we can kind of do a bit of freestyle in the questions if there's any. Hopefully there's a few. So. So as an overview or a summary of the project, this project takes tinnitus and the concept of noise as a basis for artistic research conducted through experimental performative collaboration. This multi-participatory project happens within a series of collaborations which lead into various performative acts. Its terms of delivery focus on performance and philosophy and the research potentials of artistic practice. This speculative inquiry confronts ideas of noise and cognition in relation to tinnitus by utilising a character creation, which I call the abstract child, as a vehicle that conceptually drives this experimental test of performance philosophy. So hence, I intend to unveil situations that engender tinnitus within this subject by creating distinct representations of how this condition affects them and what the implications are and could be. So this first image was just one of the images that's part of the research called, which is called post-tinnital image 2, actually, in the CO series. So an introduction to the project. The project's intentions lead to various performance events, both live, online, and a mix of both with the participating artists. The artists and researchers involved currently are Två Cykler, who are a duo of musicians, Swedish musicians, and John Bryden and myself. But for the next task, throughout the end of this year and next, is to propose further collaborations, which I have many ideas about. But time being what it is, I'll carry on. The project will culminate in the publishing of texts and other relevant documentation in an experimental or certainly an exploratory capacity. The long-term objective is to publish this research series as a physical document that includes a variety of possible forms of presentation, such as text, audio, visual works, performance, etc. So these two images, this is John on the right, and he also records under the name Eyes of Others, and that's me and Två Cykler, who have a poster for a recent event we had at Filkingen in Stockholm, because we've been working together for a number of years on various projects and ideas. So the detailed research proposal. My research contributes to the fields of contemporary continental philosophy through sonic musical performance and my foundational fiction or theoretical writing practice. This is done to create a type of philosophical performance that explores these disciplines. Perhaps you could, if anyone's interested, you can look at Performance Philosophy Journal for further context. It's an interesting journal if you're interested in these disciplines. So what is meant by a fiction theory practice, as opposed to theory fiction, in this case, is an intention to refocus these text foundations towards more lucid anthropocentric framings, so as to break with the primarily fixed subject-based accounts. So I attempt to create works in this spirit by formulating texts that explicitly question and experiment with language and forms of literary writing. This topic also stems from my larger doctoral research project and its interest in contemporary philosophy's preoccupations with embodied characterizations that focus extensively on a specifically formed subject. So it takes tinnitus as its point of departure, anchoring this expanding collaborative and critical undertaking. So how tinnitus is channeled into my subject and what symbolic potentials and implications this auditory condition has is the key for this artistic and critical task. Therefore, the work's matter of concern, one could say, and realization occurs through my writing. And the experiment, therefore, coalesces around the fields of contemporary performance philosophy, these fiction theory writing exercises, and collaborative musical sonic practices, which relate to the research topics of tinnitus and noise, as I've said, as the grounds of relation. This is where the project speculatively emerges from. And this is just some images from my PhD, I should have said. And this is another just of the slides relating to the tinnitus work. So the character and the concept is subsequently the vehicle used to critically examine philosophical characterizations relating to this theme of tinnitus and noise. This is the basis for its artistic research. So I recently began this work collaborating with the Scottish artist John Bryden, and we had a variety of ways of collaborating our methodology, which I could go into in the questions if anyone would like. So to summarize, by adapting the creative potentials of tinnitus and noise as the work's conceptual focus, and through experimenting with the fiction theory literary practice and collaborative performance philosophy, we aim to reveal ideas and elements about this auditory condition by depicting how it shapes the creation of my speculative character as its initial foundation. So I could just quickly say something a little bit more on the background. Hopefully I'm not going too much over the time, but on that, so medically, tinnitus is described as being neurologically defined as an auditory perception in the absence of an external source of sound, which is a quote. My own long-term experience of this condition and its symptoms began my recent interest in tinnitus as a subject for artistic research. This project's topic evolved through and with this semi-fictitious character, for it seemed to fundamentally fit with their history as well. As my research develops the actual experienced and symbolic nature of this condition is making it for an in-depth and enriching theme for this expanding project. As a result, this manifests sensorially within the subject and crucially acts as a basis for the collaborations. And here's just a quick, some of the influences on the project, or influence is the terrible word, but I mean more like some of the background research. So I quote quickly, "We are surrounded by noise, and this noise is indistinguishable. It is outside. It is the world itself, and it is inside, produced by our living body. We are in the noises of the world. We cannot close our door to their reception, and we evolve, rolling in this incalculable swell." So this project substantially began by centering on the concept of noise, specifically in relation to Michel Serres' philosophical work. His book here, The Parasite, where the quote was taken from, has played a pivotal role, both critically with his treatment of noise and the living body, which are foremost concerns here, and in terms of the expansive nature of this book's literary form and ambition. So I'm also focusing on the research of Marie Thompson, whose book's also here, in connection with noise and eventually tinnitus as part of this process. Her book, Beyond Unwanted Sound, Noise, Affect and Aesthetic Moralism, alongside her collaborations with artist Patrick Farmer, it's one of his images here, have been useful references for this project. In her book, she ultimately takes a view that noise cannot be abated in its entirety, for it is not only disruptive but crucially foundational. This is what allows transmission to occur in the first place. This idea of foundational noise is one I'm eager to pursue in this work. Presciently, Farmer is a tinnitus conditioned artist as well, and has dedicated significant amounts of his work to focus on this condition, most notably his book Azimuth, The Ecology of an Ear, in 2019. The notion of a feedback loop, and specifically its parasitic potentials, inform an idea that this aspect of my research is building on. This then makes the sounds pervasive to the subject experiencing them, and under specific conditions, these begin to affect other cognitive patterns. So the sorts of artists and practitioners I plan to approach and engage with developed and synergized through my sustained interest in the research of philosopher Cecile Malaspina, and specifically her book, this one, An Epistemology of Noise, and the study group that she has called Aesthetics of Noise, Philosophy, Digital Culture, and Artistic Experimentation. So in her book, she describes noise as a sort of parasite and the threat to the norm and subversive of work and order. Noise is the relation between the known, the unknown, and the differently known, in both its sound and random variation manifestations. And this project will speculatively focus on both. To this facet of the research, I've begun to study also the philosopher Gilbert Simondon. His notion of the trans-individual presented itself as profoundly relatable to the project's methodology. So this definition of it constituting an operation in which a certain amount of individuals, born of successive operations of individuation, construct a relation between themselves that ultimately form a consistent aggregate. This provides vital material and impetus for devising a method that will bring together different individuals who can engage with these ideas in order to form an aggregate of this nature around their and this research. Crucially, this process of collectivity, which amalgamates and coalesces through the diverse collections of responses to this project's themes, is where this constructive aggregate takes place. So I close finally. Thanks for your time and patience. My intention is to reveal a process of Simondonian individuation, where the pre moves into a trans-like state to the multiplying and proliferation of various works and sources produced by us together as the project's participants. These assessments are significantly aligned with my thoughts and interpretations regarding tinnitus, especially around my interests in the vignettes of sound and tinnitus that act as a way to understand how technical objects produce inorganically organized effects and how these effects shape and alter the body. This is where these collaborations find their research sources, and it is this notion of the technical object that again draws heavily on Simondon's work, which is, according to Malaspina and her extensive work on Simondon, evidence of a founding human act and also of its functional intelligibility. It can, in principle, be deconstructed, reconstructed, and transmitted as information, or as Simondon presents and discusses, as pure information. So consequently, Simondon's trans-individuation alongside the technical object's critical versatility and functional intelligibility contained in it as a foundational human act further emboldens my plans around creating this larger collaborative work. So this has been initiated by centering this project on the various effects and artistic research potential of this auditory condition, tinnitus. Thank you. Sorry if I went over, sorry.